Israel continues to escalate their ground offensive in Gaza. Thousands of Palestinians flee as the death toll continues to rise for both sides amid intense fighting. Fox News reporter John Huddy has the latest from Gaza.
Today has been the bloodiest of the fighting so far in the 13 days of Operation Protective Edge, and also since the ground offensive started 3 days ago. At least 100 Palestinians were killed, 60 of them, at least 60, in one East Gaza neighborhood alone. Now, we went into that neighborhood to see the destruction, and it doesn't matter what political side you're on, what your viewpoint is. We went in there, and what we saw was very difficult to take in. Have a look. This is all just gut-wrenching to see. I mean, utter just destruction. Everything's been destroyed. This home, what used to be a home, people's bed sheets still there. I'm seeing clothing, shoes, what used to be probably the living room or kitchen. You know, we saw the shelling, we heard the airstrikes, we watched it from this area. Now to actually be here, to smell the smoke, to see this, and also the children, the dead bodies being put in the ambulances. I mean, there's still clothing hanging on the clotheslines. It's just, it's gut-wrenching. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed with emotion at this point. It's just utter destruction. Everything you see here is damaged. It's been hit by either artillery fire or airstrikes. This is what's left of an ambulance. Rescue crews here are running out of time. There was a 2-hour window ceasefire for humanitarian reasons. Now they have less than an hour. And it is difficult to see children's bodies being pulled out of the rubble. On the other side of the fight, on the Israeli-Gaza border, 13 Israeli soldiers were killed. More than 50 have been wounded. Diplomatic efforts are underway to try to come to a ceasefire. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is expected on the ground here in the Middle East to try to broker some kind of ceasefire agreement, but that remains elusive. As the fighting continues, the ground operation expanded. More than 70,000 Israeli troops now involved, and tonight alone we've seen several airstrikes and heard heavy artillery fire as the battle continues. Judge, back to you.
All right, John, thanks so much. With me now, the former Deputy Defense Minister, Danny Danon, live from Tel Aviv. Danny, before today, there were only 5 Israeli soldiers killed. What happened today that so many more were killed?
Judge, it is not easy to fight inside Gaza. It's a heavy populated area, and unfortunately, 13 of our boys are coming back home in coffins. It is very hard for us as a nation, but we know we are doing the right thing. We have to fight in order to allow the people in Israel to live. Every night, my daughters have to run to the shelter because of the missiles. We cannot live that way. So the IDF is doing what it needs to do, is to fight against terrorists. Unfortunately, they are hiding after civilian population, behind civilian population, and it is not easy for us to see those pictures.
And Danny, is the whole purpose of this ground offensive to find those tunnels and destroy those tunnels? And do you have any idea how many tunnels there are from Gaza that go into Israel?
First of all, Judge, I have to admit, we were caught by surprise. We knew that they have tunnels, but we had no idea about the quantity and the quality of the tunnels. Unfortunately, they poured all the cement we allowed them to bring into Gaza to build schools, to build hospitals. They put it in the ground, building tunnels in order to get inside Israel. We found more than 34 tunnels already, but I think there are many more that we have to look after them, and that's what we are doing. We're looking for the tunnels. We're fighting against Hamas. It is not easy for us, but we are strong. I believe eventually we will prevail.
And, you know, today, the President Obama, speaking to your Prime Minister Netanyahu, said that we seek an immediate cessation of hostilities based on a return to the 2012 ceasefire agreement. What is your reaction to President Obama asking Prime Minister Netanyahu to go back to that ceasefire from 2012?
President Obama did one thing good we can agree about. It's killing Osama bin Laden. You cannot come to us and tell us what to do with Hamas. We have to fight Hamas. You cannot negotiate with Hamas. And if we will have a ceasefire eventually, we have to make sure that they have no tunnels anymore and they don't have missile capability.
Well,
Otherwise, within 6 months.
Danny, excuse me for interrupting, but how can you be sure that there are no more tunnels? How, I mean, Israeli intelligence is pretty on top of their game. How did you not know that the concrete that apparently you thought was being used to build schools was being used for these tunnels? So, in other words, my question is, how do you know when to stop?
It is very hard. I agree with you, Judge. But I think what we are doing now, we're showing the Hamas that we are not willing to continue with the result that we had last time after the conflict that ended 20 months ago. We don't want to come back into Gaza next year. So we're willing to pay a price, a heavy price, and we're doing it, but we want to have stability for a long term. And I think the US must understand that we need the support, we need the time to fight back. Can you imagine 2/3 of Israel is under missile attack as we speak? Can you imagine the US would have been in the same situation? What would President Obama would have done if 2/3 of the US citizens would have been under fire every night?
Well, what about John Kerry coming tomorrow? It's my understanding that John Kerry, Secretary of State here, is going to Cairo to try to a continuation of that 2012 ceasefire. What effect, if any, can that have?
Well, Secretary Kerry must understand it is not enough to have a ceasefire. We cannot play under the rules of the Hamas, that they will decide when to start, when to finish. We want to make sure what will happen after that with the missiles capability, with the tunnels, with the Hamas. And I think Egypt can play a major role on this issue because Egypt today understands that Hamas is a threat to the region, a threat to Egypt. So we have to make sure that we work together with Egypt, that the Hamas is weak after this conflict.
Well, if Hamas is considered a terrorist organization, why do you think the rest of the world, the international community, is not getting involved?
Well, we are used to it, unfortunately. But I look at the way that Hamas is using the civilian population in Gaza. You know what, Judge? They hate us. Let's admit it. We are used to it. But look what they are doing to the people in Gaza today. They are using them as a human shield. They're putting the missiles in schools. They're putting the army inside the medical clinics. This is unacceptable. Those people have no mercy on their own people. That's why we have to be tough. We have to fight back, and that's what we are doing.
All right, and Danny, before we go, I mean, is it your contention that Israel must continue with the boots on the ground, 70,000 that we hear right now, until you are sure that there are no more tunnels from which they can launch attacks or store weapons?
Absolutely, Judge. We have no desire to stay in Gaza. I was in Gaza when I was younger in my military service. It is not pleasant a place to be there. We have no desire to occupy Gaza, but we will stay there as long as we need to in order to clean up the tunnels, and also we will try to hurt Hamas as much as possible.
All right, Danny. Dan, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Judge.
All right. And up next, more on the escalating crisis on our southern border.